Among their many uses, commas can be used to link clauses in sentences. To do this effectively, we have to know when to use them to link two independent clauses in a sentence and to link an independent with a subordinate clause. So let's learn. The first thing we need to take a look at are the two kinds of conjunctions that are used to link clauses together. The first of which is coordinating conjunction, and the second of which is the subordinating conjunction. Now, in the context of the coordinated conjunction, it's used to create compound sentences, whereas the subordinated conjunctions are used to create complex sentences. Now, let's begin with the coordinated conjunctions. With respect to coordinated conjunctions, there are three things to consider. First, they show that two independent clauses are equal in value. The second element we want to consider is that they establish how they are related. Specifically, words like and show an addition, and words like but show a contrast. And finally, they will be preceded by a comma. Let's take a look at the popular acronym fanboys to understand which words are actually coordinating conjunctions. We have for, which is an explanation similar to because, but because will show that one idea is subordinate, where for in this context is used to show two equally important ideas. This one is a little antiquated and is not used very often in contemporary writing as a coordinating conjunction. And, which shows an addition, nor, which shows an exclusion, a paired exclusion, but, which shows a contrast, or, which shows an alternative, and the Y, of course, stands for yet, which is kind of a fancy contrast. It's the same as but it's a different word. And finally, so, which shows a conclusion. You will also sometimes see the word while used as a coordinated conjunction, although it's also used more commonly as a subordinator, and similar thing goes for the word whereas. So keep an eye on those, but we're going to primarily focus on the fanboys. All right, so we'll begin here. Los Polos Hermanos has amazing chicken, comma, and Venezia has incredible pizza. Now, in this context, we have one independent clause. Los Polos Hermanos has amazing chicken, and we close that clause out with a comma and a conjunction. In this case, comma and the word and, showing that the idea that follows is an additional, equally important idea. That is, of course, the sentence unto itself. Venezia has incredible pizza also works as a complete sentence. So now we have two independent clauses, two complete sentences that are equally important. We join them with the and, but the key thing here is we have the comma before the conjunction. Likewise, we might say Tim Hortons coffee is always fresh, comma, but their donuts are not. In this context, again, we have two independent clauses, equally important, but the nature of the relationship is a little different because it's a contrast. Tim Hortons coffee is always fresh. That works as a complete sentence in and of itself. We have the comma but to show that there's an additional, equally important idea that contrasts that. Their donuts are not. Again, this works as an independent clause, and the reader is introduced to this with the comma and the coordinated conjunction to show that they're equally important, and the conjunction specifying that it is a contrasting idea. Subordinators, in contrast, establish that one clause supports another. There's still two clauses here, but the subordinate clause does not have an equal value in this context, a distinction between the coordinated conjunction. It establishes the nature of the relationship as well, much as the conjunctions do, but because it's subordinate, if it comes at the end of the sentence, there's no comma before it. Let's take a look at an example. Dairy Queen turned down Big Boy's proposal because he proposed with an onion ring. So we do have two complete sentences in a sense here. We have Dairy Queen turned down Big Boy's proposal, which would work as a sentence by itself. But rather than a comma and a conjunction, we simply have a subordinated conjunction because, and then we have he proposed with an onion ring. Now that could work as a sentence by itself, but when paired with a subordinate conjunction, it becomes subordinate, and therefore we do not have a comma at the end of the word proposal and before the conjunction because. Likewise, the chicken crossed the road because he was being followed by Colonel Sanders. Now, in this context, again, we have the main clause, the chicken crossed the road, and a subordinated conjunction because. Then another clause, which could by itself work as an independent clause, he was being followed by Colonel Sanders. However, this clause is paired with the word because, therefore it's subordinate, and we do not have a comma at the end here. So how do you tell the difference between a coordinating and subordinating conjunction? This is a little tricky, and when you have two complete sentences, students often become confused if there should be a comma before the conjunction that links them. So there is a pro tip that you can use. What you're going to do is swap the clauses around. So whatever clause at the beginning, you put it at the end and vice versa. Now, when you do this, if you have a compound sentence, then the conjunction will either stay in the middle or you have to change the conjunction altogether, one or the other, right? In that case, that means that you have a comma before the conjunction because it is a coordinating conjunction in a compound sentence. So in that context, you need to include the comma. However, if you have a complex sentence, what happens when you switch them is that the conjunction stays with the clause and moves to the beginning of the sentence, right? And in that case, you won't put a comma because it is a subordinate conjunction. Let's take a look at how this pro tip functions in practice. Burger King is royalty, comma, but Ronald McDonald is a clown. So we got two independent clauses here. And if we're going to do our pro tip, what we want to do is switch these two clauses around. So we're going to bring Ronald McDonald as a clown up top, Burger King is royalty on the bottom. And now you'll see that this sentence still works. With the conjunction in the middle, the meaning maintains the same thing. So if this is a check, that means you have a compound sentence. You're going to put a comma before the conjunction, right? Let us try this again, but now with a subordinated conjunction. The chicken crossed the road because Colonel Sanders was following him. Again, we got two clauses, but now we're going to swap them around so that we can see if the sentence makes sense without them. Colonel Sanders was following him because the chicken crossed the road. That does not make sense. Colonel Sanders is not following the chicken because he crossed the road. He's following the chicken for a different purpose. Therefore, we have to reconsider how this sentence should be structured. If we keep the subordinate conjunction with the subordinate or dependent clause, and it follows the beginning of the sentence, now the sentence works. Because Colonel Sanders was following him, comma, the chicken crossed the road. And because the conjunction stays with the clause and moves to the beginning, we know it's subordinate. So therefore, there shouldn't be a comma before the subordinated conjunction in the middle of the sentence. Let us do a quick summary. When you're using a coordinated conjunction with a comma, you can link two independent clauses. And in that way, the comma will introduce an independent clause with the conjunction, formulating a compound sentence, keeping in mind that the two clauses are independent and equally important. If, however, you're using a subordinated conjunction, there's no comma because the second clause is not an independent clause, and therefore there won't be a comma. If you're confused about differentiating, try that little trick where we swap out the clauses. If the conjunction stays in the middle, or if it has to change, you got a compound sentence, you should have a comma before that coordinated conjunction. If, however, the conjunction stays with the subordinate clause and moves to the beginning of the sentence, that means you have a complex sentence and a subordinator, so you won't put a comma before the conjunction. Hopefully that was clear. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below and we'll get to them as soon as possible. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.